Hi, this is Brent, and today we're going to go through the Work with Relationships tutorial in the Develop in Swift tutorials. And here, this is continuing on the project that we've been working on, where we're working with SwiftData, and we have this Friends Favorite Movies project. And if you didn't follow along on the first two tutorials, you can just go ahead and download the project files. Or if you're like me and you made a mistake in your project and you need to download the file, go ahead and download that and then unzip it and open the Xcode project, and we're going to trust and open. So far we've been able to add friends and add movies, but now we want to create a relationship between a friend liking a favorite movie, as well as a movie having a list of who the friends are that like this movie. So we're relating the content between the friend class and the movie class. To do that, let's add a property on the friend class, and we'll call it var favorite movie, and it'll be of type movie. And then we need to put the question mark at the end. And the reason we do that is so that we can reference this property without having to initialize it when we create a new friend. And so this, when you put the question mark, it refers to as optional, meaning literally it means that this property is optional. We don't have to assign anything to it when we create an instance of the friend class. But also it means that it could be nil when we go to access this property, and so we have to make sure we're referencing it properly. So we've created this property, and now we have a relationship to the movie class. Now we want to go to the movie class and add a variable, and we'll call it var favorited by, and it'll be an array of friend objects. So here we've initialized this variable. When we use the equal signs, we've created a default value. So we've already initialized it, and it's an empty array, but it's an array that expects a list of friends. So now with that, we've now created a relationship from the movie class to the friend class by saying this property can hold an array of friends. So here in the friend, this variable can only be assigned to one movie. So it's a one-to-one relationship. But in the movie class, we can have multiple friends in this array. And so now that's a one-to-many relationship. We'll see how that looks in the UI here in a few minutes. Now that we have that relationship established, we need to create a few sample data relationships so that we can see this in our preview. So as we update the UI, we have some content that represents this new relationship. So here in our insert sample data method, in that function, we want to create a few relationships where we say friend dot sample data, and we're referencing the array of friends, and we're going to say for 0, which is the first index in the array, we're going to say dot favorite movie equals movie dot, and now we can assign a movie from the sample data array, and we're going to reference movie in the 1 index, which is the second item of the array. Remember, arrays in Swift are 0 based. So the first index is 0 and the second is 1. So now we've established a relationship where we have this friend has a favorite movie, which is this movie. And let's go ahead and add a few more. So we're going to say friend sample. And again, you remember you press tab to autocomplete. And we say favorite movie, press tab, and then we say equals movie dot sample data, and we're going to reference the first one. And then we say friend sample data, and we're going to say number 3 dot favorite movie equals movie dot sample data, and let's say number 4, and then we say friend dot sample data 4 dot favorite movie equals movie dot sample data, and we can reference the same movie that we've already done before. So remember, favorite movie is a one-to-one, so it can only have one movie associated with it. But the favorited by will automatically, it can handle multiple friends. And so you can have, so this first movie in the index in our array now has 2 friends that like that movie. The nice thing about SwiftData and this relationships, where you've got one property that is connected to another on a different class, it automatically adds these to the favorited by. So we don't have to write the code to say, okay, now favorited by and add this friend. It automatically does it for us, the way that SwiftData handles it. So that's really nice. You only need to assign on one of the properties in order to assign it to both, if that makes sense. So again, we've assigned it to the friend and it's added it to that property, but on the movie, it's automatically adding it to the favorited by array because it established that connection, because those two, that's how we're connected to each other. So now we need to show these options in the UI. So let's go to the friend detail. And in the friend detail, what we want is to add an additional element under a control in our form so that they can see the list of movies so that we can pick the movie. So under the text field, we're going to use a picker, and a picker has a UI that allows you to, so we're going to call this favorite, boy, I can't spell today, favorite movie. And then we say selection, and we're going to bind it to the friend dot favorite movie. So when you make, and then we have a curly brace, and now we have a picker. We're going to add some information here in a second. But again, the picker, it allows you to select from a list of items, and then once you've made a selection, it automatically assigns it to the favorite movie. So if we want to see our list of movies, we need to pass in the sample data to our previews. So if we go to the previews, and then underneath, we're saying in our navigation stack, we had a modifier that says model container, and then we pass in the sample data dot shared dot model container. So now our preview can reference the sample data. We need to do that for our other preview. So we say model container, whoops, not context container, is sample data dot shared dot model container. So now we have all of the sample data. We can now reference that in our view. We should add a query so that we can get the list of movies. So we're going to have a @query, and we're going to sort this by the movie title. So we do /movie.title, and then we're going to set that to a private var movies, which is an array of movie. Now we have to import SwiftData since we're accessing the SwiftData as well. So now we get rid of that error. So now we are importing SwiftData, and now we can get our list of movies. Now inside the picker, we can use a for each view. Whoops, for each, press tab, and we go through the array of movies. And then we do the curly brace and we say movie in. And then from here, we want to say text, and we're going to say movie.title. So now that shows up here. Now we have our list of movies. These are all the sample data movies we created. The only trouble is if we select it, it doesn't actually select it. And the reason for that is we need to use a property called tag so that we know what value to add when it's selected. So here we're saying .tag, and it's going to be the movie. And so now when you select the item, it assigns that and selects the movie and assigns it to our favorite movie. One thing we want to do is be able to let the user select none. And so right now they have to select a movie, but if they don't like any of those movies, we need to give us another option. So if we go above the for each block and we say text and we'll call it none, then we need to give it a tag. And what we want is to set it at nil, but we can't set it as any generic nil. We need to set it as a type of movie. So we say nil as movie, and we use the question mark. And again, the reason for this is because when we reference this, we want it to be nil, but of type movie, because favorite movie is expecting a type of movie. And so now when we have this, we can select none, and then that works without any issue. Now let's go over to our movie detail so that we can see the list of people, the friends who like this movie. So to do that, below the date picker, we're going to add a section. And this is where you can group things. When you're using a form, you can use a section so that you can group things with a text. And so we're going to say favorited by, whoops. And then we have a curly brace. And here we're going to use a for each. And we're going to say movie.favorited by. And here we're going to say friend in. And we're going to use a text. And we're going to say friend dot name. So now what we're doing is we're showing a list of friends who have favorited this movie. Okay, so next, if a movie doesn't have any friends that like the movie, then we don't want to show this favorited by section. So what we can do then is wrap it in an if. So we say if, and we say exclamation point, which means not. If movie.favorited by is empty. If this is not empty, then we show it. Otherwise, and then at the end we put another curly brace and then it fixes it. So we're saying if favorited by is not empty, then show this section. Otherwise, if it is empty, then it doesn't show it. So if we go to our movie list, you can see this in action. And so if I go to the first movie, I see 2 friends like it. If I go to the second one, I see 1. If I go to the third movie, no one likes this movie, and so we're not seeing that section. So we see that that's working. Something you may notice is that the list of friends that shows up may not always be in order. And the reason for that is by default, the data in the array is not necessarily sorted. And so notice when we when we did the query with our friends, when we do the list of movies, in the friend detail, we use a query and we sort the movies because then everything is listed alphabetically. Well, we need to do the same thing in the movie detail to guarantee that the list of friends is sorted. So look, notice how now it's sorted, but when we were looking at it just a second ago, they weren't sorted properly. So to guarantee that it is sorted properly, what we'll do is up here below our init function, we're going to say var, and we're going to use a computed property. So we're going to say sorted friends, and it'll be return an array of friends. and then use the curly brace. And for now, we're going to just sort this. We're just going to return the list of movies. We get this error because in the tutorial, it was written, so I downloaded this code from the Apple website, and this code was running against an older version of Xcode. In Xcode 26, which is the version we're using right now, it's treating this as an error because we're referencing SwiftData, but we haven't actually imported the SwiftData class, and so we need to import that. So if you run into this error, if you're using the sample code that was written by Apple, it's not going to be working properly. So to fix it, we need to import SwiftData. All right, at the moment, this sorted friends is just returning this array. We haven't sorted it yet. We'll get to that in a second. But for now, down here in our for each, instead of referencing the favorited by for the movie, we need to reference the sorted friends. And so this is a computed property, meaning we're going to do some calculation. We're going to modify this and return a value. And so we reference the sorted friends, but then we need to update this. We want to use a custom sorting. And so there's a method that's called .sorted. And what we'll do is use a closure. In fact, if we say sorted by, and you select that one, and then you press return, it's going to give us a closure where we need to fill in some data. So here we're referencing, this is like a template for this example, and we want to customize this. So here, what we're doing is we have two properties, and so we're just going to say, we're going to call this one first, and then we're going to call this one second, and then in the code, we're going to do a custom sorting, and so we're going to say first dot name less than second dot name. In previous tutorials, we've already seen, let's see, oh, I got to spell it first. Okay. In previous tutorials, we talked about using a custom sorting, custom calculation on an array. And we're using that here where we're saying we're doing a custom comparison. And so what this will do is for each friend in the favorited by array, it's going to compare them and it's going to put them in order so that if the name is alphabetically higher than another, it'll put it in the right order. So now we have that, and so this is updated. Obviously, it had already randomly shown it properly, but now whenever we go to show the list of friends, we know for sure that it will be sorted properly. The next UI change we want to do is be able to show a filtered list. We're going to search for a movie in our movie list. So let's go to the movie list, and we want to be able to sort these movies using a search. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to create a way for us to sort against a value. So we pass in a certain value and say, filter all the movies that have these letters in them. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll create a custom initializer. And this way, when we do this, we can pass in a parameter if as needed. So we're going to say init, and remember, we're not doing the default initializer. We are adding a second initializer, and so this will be a custom one. And we're going to use a property called title filter, and it's going to be a string, and then we're going to set it to an empty string. And remember, when you set a property to equals to something, like you've initialized it with a value, you've given it a default value. So that means when we load the movie list, we don't have to use the title filter value because we have a default assignment to it. So this way we don't have to go through and change everywhere we reference movie list and give it a value. So for now, we've got that set up. We want to use what is called a predicate. So we'll say let predicate equal, and then we're using a £sign predicate. And then it's going to be of type movie. And then we say movie in, and then it's going to return true. Now, we're going to update this here in a second, but we use a predicate. It's a type of value that is used in SwiftData for filtering data. So first, we've created this predicate. Now we want to use it, and the way we're going to use it is after this, we're going to say underscore movies equals query, and we'll say filter predicate. So now we're passing in this predicate, and then sort, we're going to say movie.title. Okay, what are we doing here? This underscore movies, this is a property that gets automatically generated. You remember when we use the at query or at environment or at state, when we create variables this way, there's a lot of code that's hidden from what we're doing, and it gets done for us. SwiftUI handles a lot of this figuring it out calculations for us. When we are using a custom filter like this with a custom predicate, we need to reference a property that is created up here that SwiftUI handles behind the scenes, and we do that by using the underscore. So here we are using the underscore movies, and we're modifying it ourselves directly. Since we're modifying this directly ourselves, we can change this query so that we don't need to do the sorting, because we've already got the sort down here. So here the movies property gets created, but then we're modifying as it gets loaded into SwiftUI. Finally, to make this work, we actually need to update the predicate so that it actually does something unique, because right now it's just returning every value when we go to get the list of movies. Instead, we want to use a custom filter. So first thing we do is we say if title filter dot is empty, then you return true, because is empty will return true if there's nothing there. And so if there are no movies to filter, then we go ahead and just return that, each movie. And then we use the pipe symbol, which is on the / key, you press shift and then you use 2 times, and it's that little pipe symbol. It means or. So we're saying return the title filter if it's empty, or we're going to filter by saying movie.title, and then we're going to say localized standard contains, and then we're going to pass in the title filter. Okay, there's a lot going on here. We're either returning the movie because it doesn't match, or we are identifying, does the movie title contain the title filter? And we're using a method called localized standard contains, so that it always returns something if it exists, and it's going to check it regardless of whether it's uppercase or lowercase, or if it has special characters. And so this is a function that's going to return this if it's a good match. So that's why we use that method. So now our predicate is going to filter based on the string you pass in, and it's going to return the list of movies that contain whatever string we pass in. To test this, we need to we can create a new preview so that we can pass in a sample text. And so we're going to say #preview, and then parentheses, we're going to give it a name, filtered. And then inside that, we're going to say movie list. And this time we're going to pass in the title filter. So here we're going to pass in a string, and we're going to say the letters TR. And then in the model container, we need to pass in, remember, the sample data dot shared dot model container. So now we've created a preview, and notice up here at the top we have this other preview that says filtered. So if we click on that, now it's returning a list of movies that contain the letter TR in the string somewhere in the title. So again, you've got the full movie list here, and now we have our filtered list here. Now that we've got a way to filter our movie list, we want to update the UI so that we can add a search bar. And to do that, what we'll do is create a new Swift UI view that will contain the movie list, and then we can add things around it. So let's go right click on the folder and then choose new file from template, and we want to select Swift UI view, choose next, and we're going to call this filtered movie list. So here in the body of our, we're going to replace the text and we're going to say movie list. So now we're loading the movie list, and remember we need to pass in some sample data. So we're going to say model container, and we're going to say sample data dot shared dot model container. So now we have our list of movies and we have everything here. Next, we want to go to the movie list, and we need to move some of the navigation information from inside the list of movies out to this new filtered movie list. So switch over to the movie list, and we're going to remove the navigation split view. So go ahead and delete that, and then we want to delete the detail as well. And so now we removed it, and here now the text is not indented properly. If you select all of that text and then you press Control-I, it re-indents everything, so now it looks a little better. Now the problem is, in this preview we've lost all of our navigation behavior, and so in order to fix that, we can wrap the movie list embed in a navigation stack, and that way when we're looking at it, and then we need to wrap that one, so embed, and we'll say navigation stack. So now we, in the preview, we get back the navigation behaviors that we're expecting. Let's go back to the filtered movie list, and let's update. We want to embed this in the navigation split view. So we right click on that, choose embed, and say navigation split view. And then we need a detail, curly brace, and then remember we had a text where we say select a movie, and we called a navigation title, which was movie, and then we had a navigation bar title, display mode dot inline. And remember, the detail view in a split view, on the iPhone you don't see the split view, but on the iPad you will see a split view. And so this detail only shows up on devices that have a larger screen like the iPad, where you will see this split view. And again, you can check that here and see it in the preview if you want. Next, we need to have a property that we can reference for the search text. And so we'll have a state variable. So at state, private var search text, and we're going to set it equal to an empty string. And then in our movie list, remember we have that custom initializer. We can now pass the title filter. We're going to do search text. So what happens is, as this state variable, as the search text changes, it's going to be updating the UI and passing in the filtered text, and remember that will filter the movies for us. Now to get the search bar, we just pass a property to the a modifier to the movie list called searchable, and the text is going to be tied, we're going to bind it to the search text. So now notice in the UI we have our search bar here at the bottom, and so now if I start typing, I'm going to say CA, and then we got the cat, and if I type VEN, and so notice it filters the list of movies automatically. Pretty sweet. Now at this point, let's go to the content view, and we need to replace the movie list with our filtered movie list. So now it's going to show up here. Now notice something different. When you go to the list of movies, we need to, let's see, filter movie list. Okay. I noticed this before. Okay. Notice I had to pull down in order to see it, but notice that the search bar is now up at the top because this is embedded, the filtered movie list is embedded in a tab view. We don't have the bottom UI like we did when we were editing it directly. So now notice the search is up at the top, but everything works the same. And so you can still filter and it updates everything properly. So I just had to swipe down. I guess what I needed was to refresh the preview in order for this to load properly. So now we see the search bar. There's just a couple more changes we want to make, and then we'll be done with this tutorial. When we launch the app, right now we're using sample data, so there's stuff that's already built in. But when the app runs in the simulator, there's no movies, there's no friends in our database. So to fix that, we want to show a UI if these things are empty. So let's go to the friend list. And what we're doing is around the list itself, we want to add an if statement. And if I go to the list and I go up here and I say if, and I say not friends dot is empty, and then I add that, and then I put below the list, and then I put the curly brace. Now what we're saying is we're going to hide the list if the friends is empty. If it's not empty, it's going to show the list for us. Now the problem is when we use an if statement, we can't have these properties modifiers, and so to fix that, we're actually going to embed the if statement inside what is called a group. And a group is a generic container that doesn't have any UI in it. The group is not a visual element, but it allows you to combine these things. So now we can have the if statement, and now we have the modifiers and the toolbars and everything associated with the group so that it works in SwiftUI. So again, we use the group as a way to add so that we can embed conditionals like this where we have if statements, and it also allows us to combine. You could use a group if you were combining common modifiers to many views all at once, and so you could wrap it in a group in order to apply a bunch of modifiers. After the if statement, what we want is to say else. We're going to show something else if it is empty, and what we want is to use what's called, there's a view called content unavailable view, and we can pass in some text, and we're going to say add friends and then we're going to use a system image, and we're going to use the person.and.person. So what we're saying is, if there's no list of friends, then I'm going to show this content unavailable view, which we can have some text as well as an image. Now, in order to see this in our preview, we need to add another preview. So we're going to go down here to the bottom, and we're going to say preview pound preview, and we'll give it a name, empty list. And then we're going to say friend list. But for the model container, we're going to use, we're going to pass in an empty object. And we did this in previous videos, but it's, instead of using sample data, we're going to say for, and then friend.self, which is the object that is in, then we're going to say in memory equals true. So what this does is it passes in an empty SwiftData container that's expecting a friend object, but it's only going to be available while we're using this in memory, so it updates every time the preview changes. So now when I click empty list, now I see this else statement that says content unavailable, and that's what that looks like. Now let's do the same thing on the movie list. So up here where we have our list, we're going to do the if movie. So let's see, hold on. Okay, if movies dot is empty, and remember we put the exclamation point, so we're saying if it's not empty, then it's going to show this, but I want to put the curly brace, but now I need to embed this in a group because you can't have modifiers on an if statement. So now we say group, and then we put that here, and we say that. And so now we're going to say if movies is not empty, we're going to show the list. If it is empty, then we're going to else, we're going to show content unavailable view, and we're going to give it a text that says add movies, and then we use a system image, and it's going to be film.stack. And in order to see this example, we go down to add another preview, and we'll say empty list, and we're going to say navigation stack, and then we say movie list, and then for the modifier we say model container, and again we say for, we're going to say it's movie.self, and then in memory equals true. So now we go to the empty list. How about I spell movie correctly? M-O-V-I-E. Okay, now we click on empty list, and now it says add movies. Awesome. So we covered quite a few items in this video. We've added a way to create relationships between a friend to like a movie, and we can show a list of movies the friends like. We've also got a way to search and filter against the movies, and then we have now this empty view when the app gets started in the simulator. Awesome. Let's go and check our understanding and see how we did. Okay. How can you establish a relationship in SwiftData from model type A to B? Let's see, add a dot relationship self to modifier? Nope. Create a class C that contains properties for both A and B? Nope. Declare a property in A of type B. So that's how you create a relationship. To infer relationships, SwiftData analyzes each model type to find properties with types matching other model types. Which view lets you select one out of many options, ideal for setting the value of a one-to-many relationship. So we have a picker, for each, and a form. So it's a picker because we can show, we pick a value from a list of many. So click pickers, let people select one value from a list. Which of the following is a true statement about predicates? You can use a predicate to filter certain results in a query. A predicate returns false to indicate that the item should be included in the query. You can use any Swift code in a predicate. All right, so this one is not right because we return true if the item should be included. And then we can't just have any old code in a predicate. And so here we say we use it as a filter to filter certain results. Pass a predicate to the filter parameter of a query to filter its results. Awesome. Great job. Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully this is helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe, and please leave any comments or questions that you have, and I will see you in the next video.